So honored to be here. I love this spirit that I feel, this room, this crowd, getting together people who just love the power, this amazing joy of movie that's possible through visions. So we've got an interesting idea for you tonight, and I'm not going to be the one to share it. Maybe I can briefly introduce, my fellow panelists. Starting on the side, we've got Deborah Elliott, Debbie. She is really a rare breed. She is a psychotherapist who has extensive training in ketamine-assisted psychotherapy. Is about to undergo next week. Yeah, next week, the formal certification with Prodi. And she also is an extremely experienced neurofeedback therapist. And she has been working in the really fertile intersection. Now, let me should tell you just a tiny bit about neurofeedback. So hopefully I'm explaining this correctly, please correct me if I'm wrong. So neurofeedback is it's a process where you can actually measure in key areas of the brain, actual brain activity. You get So imagine you have that access while, and you can track somebody prior to, during, and after a psychedelic session. How amazing would that be? Let's talk data, folks. This is real, this is collectible, this is relatively cheap. So Debbie has a lot of experience in that intersection. So it's really great work. Is there anything else I missed, Debbie, that's important?
I also do a lot with breathing, and I'm a ketamine-assisted therapist that works with both individuals and groups.
Okay, and now we have John Schubert. Did I say your name right? Okay, and he is Debbie's husband, and Debbie, John, and I work together professionally, administering ketamine in individual group settings, as already mentioned. John, as I'll put it as John stated, Debbie and I handle the interior world of the actual process of the experience, and John handles the exterior world. So he handles all the business logistics, coordination, marketing. We owe John tremendous debt of gratitude because I would be floored if I tried to do a fraction. And John's a working business grad, and so don't get him started talking about business. You better have a couple hours on you. So John, am I missing anything important?
No. So my take on so what we do is with ketamine, and what I would add is that I come from the inside out. So I've done some of these experiences, and so that's where my expertise comes. It's like part of that.
Okay, now we have to my left, Mark Abrams. These guys are all some of my absolute closest friends in the world, by the way. So this is such a joy to do this. So I knew Mark back in Atlanta. He's part of the reason why I'm here. I moved here last year. So Mark, I consider to be a pioneer in the field of psychedelic therapy group settings. He, if I understand it correctly, has a vision of relating to cannabis in a third way, right? We all know medical, we all know recreational, they're beautiful, but what about intentional in sacred set and setting? And so I've actually experienced many of his groups and I've seen the evolution, and I'm just so impressed at how they just keep seeming to get better and better. This guy, here's what I call it, Abrams engineering. His attention to detail is just superlative. So he's the guy I want around me to watch my back when I forget to cross my T's and dot my I's. So one of his concepts is that he applies core mindfulness skills, if I understand this correctly, really to help participants navigate the psychedelic experience. And if you don't believe cannabis can be a psychedelic, please attend one of Mark's ceremonies or there are other really venerable institutions in our area that do similar work. But just give yourself a chance if you haven't had a chance, if you like. So anyway, he teaches people how to use real-world mindfulness skills during the journey, and perhaps more importantly, how to apply them afterwards. So I think it's a really special combination, and this guy can put together a playlist like nobody's business. All right, so
Yeah,
Mark's going to lead us on a guided meditation if you guys are willing to just.
Yeah, I thought we would just kind of settle in for a couple of minutes and kind of leave the outside world outside. If you'd like, gently close your eyes and just check in. Just check into how your body is feeling right now. Nothing to judge, nothing to label, just noticing. Just noticing. Noticing any tension. And just allowing the gravity to pull it down into the earth. Just coming to a bit of silence within. Bringing your attention to your breath. Maybe you haven't been paying attention to it all day. Just noticing your breath. Just feeling cold air as it comes in your nostrils. And the warmer air as you exhale. Nothing to change, nothing to judge. Just relaxing in your breath. And now bringing your attention down into your heart space. Just noticing. Noticing any sensations. Warmth. Stress. Just watching. Now I invite you to think about somebody who you are really grateful for. Someone who you're really grateful for in this life. Just witness how that feels in your heart. Just noticing. Now I invite you to think about somebody who you care for deeply in this world. And just notice how that feels in your heart. And then somebody in this world who cares deeply for you. And notice any sensations. And finally, what are you passionate about in this world? What is your purpose? Really tune into that. And how does that land in your heart? And now if you would, imagine projecting your heart into the center of the room in front of the stage. Just projecting your heart into the center of the room in front of the stage. Just being there. And imagine all of the other hearts are there. All together, open hearts. Just embracing each other. Just giving a big heart hug. Now bringing your attention back to your body. And in your own time, gently opening your eyes.
Thank you, Mark. So I'm going to be a little bit moderator tonight, and I want to ask Naveen to introduce the topic of the evening, to basically set the framework of what are we talking about tonight. Okay.
So the stated topic this evening is psychedelic group process, a new frontier in psychedelic therapy.
So how does it relate to our cultures? Have we done that all the time here in the West?
Sure. As many of you know, many of the cultures around the world steward the entheogens. They have evolved exquisite structure across millennia. This is the scientific method of experience and intuition. To craft experiences, tremendously healing experiences for the people of that community, and it tends to occur in groups, and some might say as tribe. Okay, and so there's tremendous. So we can speculate as to how this evolved and why. I don't think I'm going to go into that speculation right now, but let's suffice it to say that when you experience the sacred in many cultures around the world, you do it as a group. That's it. No negotiation. As tribes. So and that's a beautiful thing, and it's got advantages and disadvantages. And we'll probably be getting into that. And so then we're going to contrast that with the way legal psychedelic therapy is conducted in most Western countries. And that is as an individual basis, which is also a beautiful thing. It too has advantages and disadvantages. So the two psychedelic medicines that we are going to be referencing on this panel are the ones that one or more of us have actual working experience with, are going to be ketamine and cannabis.
That's also because both of these are legal, right? At this point, also I have to speak up a little bit here. So the other reason is that we're limiting our talk tonight to ketamine and cannabis is that these are two medicines that are in the current environment, both legal. And so we can expand beyond that, but that's not the scope of this evening.
Yeah, there are many medicines that are perhaps soon to be legal, but that's a different topic. So, and then in terms of the individual that I think it reflects most Western cultures. At least in the U.S., I think it's fair to say that we tend to have a more individualistic mindset compared with many other cultures in other areas around the world, and that's neither good nor bad. It just is. So one of the things that we'd like to explore tonight is what's the intersection between those two worlds? Is it possible? Is it valuable to think about applying some of these structures, with the more actionable structures from some of these cultures, into modern Western psychedelic therapy?
Okay, so we talked about, you mentioned ketamine. I presume that not everybody here is familiar with ketamine. Can you talk about what that is? And I looked it up on Wikipedia. It says it's a dissociative drug. What does that mean?
Okay. So ketamine is a medication that was initially custom built as an anesthesia agent. And it can be used for a number of procedural sedation purposes. It actually cut its teeth in the Vietnam War. For reasons I'm not going to get into. It's extremely stable medicine, really easy to transport. So let's put it this way. If you or your family member was a soldier in Vietnam and you took fire in the field, you really, really hoped that your buddy had some ketamine in his pack. Okay? All right, so what does that have to do with psychedelics? So ketamine, I think of ketamine a little bit like a chameleon. A chameleon changes its color depending on its environment. Ketamine changes its color depending on its environment. What's that color? It's the environment's the dosing. What dose range are we using? Very low and I'll use very, very different medicine depending on the dose. And the color in this case, is the experience. What are we producing with the ketamine? So ketamine is classified as a dissociative medication, dissociative anesthetic. What does that mean? Dissociation, distance from the body. In some mental health circles, the word dissociation perhaps has a somewhat negative tone, as a maladaptive, potentially maladaptive coping strategy. I like to see dissociation in a positive way. During the ketamine experience, we have the opportunity to disassociate from ourselves as a physical body, and we have an opportunity to associate with ourselves as something beyond body. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Naveen. So Mark, how do you apply cannabis in a group environment?
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you very much for being here, Dr. Hoffman.
Oh, thank you.
So
this is the impersonation of Terrence McKenna, right? He's really good at that.
So I definitely appreciate your contribution to the world of entheogens with lysergic acid. As many of you may know, it's not my preferred psychedelic, although I have been known to do a little California sunshine, a little blotter, a little acid, a little Lucy in the Sky with diamonds. But my preferred psychedelics are, of course, the psilocybin cubensis mushroom and cannabis sativa. That's my main go-to.
So how do you apply that in a group setting? What do you do in a group with cannabis? How is it different from the individual experience?
So I have a major preference toward the group experience, just a bias toward it, for all of the connection, the sense of community, the social aspects of it, and the bonding. I think that there's really there's no easier way to connect with people and make kind of insta friends than being in a psychedelic ceremony. I mean, you're all essentially going through some kind of internal battle together, and it's a really amazing bonding experience. And I think cannabis plays very well into that. So really, we utilize cannabis in a similar way as other entheogens in ceremony that you may do. We share intentions out loud within the group. That really helps to kind of bring things out and kind of concretize things for ourselves. We do sharing at the end of the group process, which again, helps to really kind of bring that group cohesiveness and that community element. And then I think during the process, a lot of times there's release, emoting, whether that might be crying or some laughter, and that really helps to inspire other participants in the group, to be able to feel comfortable and go in and release as well.
So Debbie, you work with ketamine, and how does that same question, how does the group experience play into the ketamine experience?
The group is amazing because on ketamine, you can connect so well in love. And so it's like creating a microcosm of the bigger society and learning all about what's going on. We have, the countertransference and the transference that happens. Like I want you to think of, if you were going to join a group, what would be your biggest fear about joining that group? And then just having that in your mind, that's usually your family origin issue. And so here we are able to really work on deeper issues when we are together and to share that, to be able to hear other people's experiences, broaden our own experiences with it. And it's just amazing to see people connect and feel part of each other, especially in these COVID times. We're isolating way too much, and it's just wonderful to be together.
So when we look at the history, we see tribes, we see other traditions, they have used these medicines in group settings, and that was usually in a spiritual or in a ceremonial way. So I would like to ask Mark, do you do something similar?
Yeah, for sure. So my work is not really medical. It's more on the kind of recreational side. However, really the object of the ceremonies are for internal healing, and we definitely bring in that spiritual element. Kind of has a neo-shamanic flair to it. We have a shared altar. We ask people to bring objects that represent allies or teachers or people or spirits that are supportive of them, and that really helps to support them during the process. We have them come up and put their written intentions into a wishing pyramid together, really to kind of like bring that group cohesiveness together. And the music is more of a kind of a mystical, spiritual nature, bringing from a lot of different traditions.
One thing we forgot to mention, if you'll notice on your tables, there should be some note cards and some pens. So if you guys at any point during the panel have any questions that come up, we would want you to write them down on the note cards, and one of our friends from the Neuroscience Society will collect that and we'll give it to John, and we'll answer as many of those questions as we can at the end. So just wanted to bring it up now.
So Mark brought up the aspect of healing. And so from my personal perspective, healing is a disconnect where the me, the individual, the ego is disconnected from something that's greater, that's bigger than me. And when in these experiences, we are allowed to have a more adjustment. We have a more direct connection that goes beyond the small self and goes to a bigger thing out there. And in the old traditions, that was called spirituality or ceremonial, the flow was ceremonial. And in more psychological ways, they call that transpersonal psychology. Now, Debbie is a transpersonal psychotherapist, right? Can you say a little bit about that, how you translate that into a Western mindset?
Yeah, so transpersonal psychology goes beyond just our personal experience. And with ketamine and cannabis, this is truly soul healing that we're having, that we can really connect to our source of life. We can go back in time. We can go to new places. We can be in the future. It's beyond our own experience. So it brings out so much rich activity that we can do. So when I'm working with trauma people, it's like we could just go wherever they need to go back to that trauma and to grab that younger child who couldn't survive the trauma so well thank them for going into that freeze position and bring them back out and then bring them back into the group and feeling that love. And it's just so beautiful to do that and get them feeling connected to their bodies again, connected to their source, connected to their communities.
Naveen, what are the advantages and disadvantages of doing this kind of work in the group?
It's a great question, John. So let's start with the advantages. In my opinion, I think the greatest advantage to the group work is access to care. This is an issue near and dear to my heart. How do we get the medicine to the people who really need it, regardless, hopefully, of their financial status? So when we do work in groups, by definition, there's greater access financially to these type of services. So that's one thing. I think another primary advantage of the group process is sort of what's already been mentioned, Russ. I don't need to go into it in great detail. It's the power of the group, the power of the tribe, shall I say. So, human beings have an intense experience together, witnessing each other, allowing ourselves to be vulnerable in front of each other, witnessing our joys, our triumphs, and our heartbreaks, and doing it together. And there's, in my opinion, there's just tremendous amounts of healing that are possible when you layer in the element of the tribe. Disadvantages? The last thing is the amplifier, right? Just from I don't have any double-blind studies to support this, but from my observation, I love individual work, but the same type of work that's done in a group, in my observation, is usually more intense. I'd venture to say perhaps even more profound. That's subject to debate, but let's just say that it's possible that the group can be amplified. Disadvantages. One disadvantage is that logistically it's more challenging. There's so many more moving parts when you're putting together a group. There's some psychodynamic or there's some psychological issues. We have to now consider group dynamics. Who would be a good participant in the group together, given that we have to balance an inherent tension. The tension between the needs of an individual who is having an experience and the greater the need for the group, the well-being of the group. So it takes a certain skill set, and it's not something that at least I was trained in my training. And the last one potential disadvantage is there is inherent intensity that can come out in the group process. And sometimes this can be frightening for people. Raw expressions of terror, of heartbreak, just unbearable trauma that comes out, and it's often amplified. There's often a contagion of that. One person experiences it, now the next person experiences it. So there, once again, it takes a certain skill set and a certain amount of training to be able to navigate that skillfully, gracefully.
Yeah, and I'd love to speak a little bit to that too. Just speaking about the advantages a little bit, you had mentioned the access to care, and a lot of people think that they're going to be giving up something if they're going to a group setting. You hear about psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy, and oftentimes you think that the therapist is going to be really doing an enormous amount of processing with you during the journey. But the reality is that, at least right now, in the States, both the clinical trials that are going on with MDMA and psilocybin, as well as the legal psychedelics of ketamine and cannabis, a therapist may be with you, but oftentimes they're not doing a lot of processing with you in the journey. They're there to support you. So you can kind of have your cake and eat it too. You can be in the group journey, you can go in that deep process with the group together, and then you can have your individual non-drug sessions with your psychotherapist. So the preparatory sessions prior to the drug, and then the integrative both preparatory and integrative psychotherapy before and after. So not a lot of people recognize that. They think that they might be giving up something, and sometimes that's the case. If your therapist is going to be doing a lot of deep dive, and that is really much more popular in Europe, called psycholytic therapy, where the psychotherapist sort of takes center stage and the psychedelic is in the background, and there's more of a small to medium dose, and there's much more talking. And of course, there's going to be a lot of experimentation going on, as things become more legal.
One thing that I think I'd love for Debbie to speak to is it's the notion of set and setting, and how does that play into the psychedelic group experience?
Yeah, we want everybody to be your own master healer, both in individual and in groups. So we recommend that people really prepare for their session, that they don't watch the news so much or horror movies, that they look at beautiful art, that they really come up with their intention of what they want to look at. So intention setting, that we'll do that at the beginning of the session with people. And then we have, how do you get your mind in that right mindset of finding your objects you might want to bring, taking a nice bath beforehand, or just preparing. And then, where we do our ceremonies is on this beautiful land that used to be Chief Niwot's lands. We bring the sacredness of that and the altars that we have on our land. And we have really comfortable places for people to be, sheepskins, and really really having a container for people to be in. And so that's really important. Having, the markers out for them to do artwork if they want, just having resources around. We have a fireplace and often incorporate that into our setting also. And then it's, creating the ceremony of being able to state your intention, being able to have some sort of protection put into the circle. We often do the 7 directions in that, and then really offer people to go into their own experience and the music is a huge part of that. And making the music list is so much fun, especially when you have a team of people to do it with. And then, as we start to come back, we often like to kind of touch people or do some healing meditations, or just kind of getting the group to do sing-alongs to kind of come back and be together. And the day of the session, we will do a little bit of integration, because I want people to kind of stay in their state of the medicine. And so we do a bigger integration where we'll do more talk stuff, and people have that option of doing that in the group, which is really wonderful to hear other people's experience. Or if they want to go a little bit deeper into their own issues, I could do private sessions with that. And a lot of time I incorporate the neurofeedback with that. And it's really amazing. There's a window of about 4 days after you take ketamine that your brain is more plastic, and I have more ability to help you change your brain patterns, to let go of head injury and depression, anxiety, OCD, and things like that. So it's such a powerful thing, that integration piece. And then we also teach people about skill, about meditation, about how to use the medicine. We don't want people to count on the medicine. We want you to become the medicine, to be that, the other thing with the transpersonal part, how to really touch into our higher selves and start coming from that place in our daily activities.
So can you walk me, all 3 of you, with Mark first, can you walk me, if I sign up for a group experience, what goes into that? What should I expect, right?
Well, first of all is setting expectations, ahead of time. So being clear about what the process is going to involve. That includes, reading and signing a participation agreement, doing a health self-assessment questionnaire. Because what I do, I don't take care of people that have significant psychiatric diagnosis or, significant medical issues. So They go through this questionnaire to kind of, make sure that they're okay to join, and we're not dealing with any kind of major PTSD or, treatment-resistant depression or anything like that. So that's a huge thing. One thing I wanted to speak to is kind of in the group process, how we manage that, so that, because cannabis is a very wild spirit, so as many of you might know. And so, but it takes direction pretty well, as long as that direction is given ahead of time. So prior to, we set the expectations for the evening. We set the individual expectations. What's acceptable behavior? One that we ask for essential silence during the journey itself, unless you need something, or you need my support or another space holder support. And then that way we don't get off on the chatty train. And it also is a safety measure too, because a lot of people don't feel socially so comfortable with cannabis. And I work with a lot of people that have a lot of anxiety or paranoia or self-consciousness on it, and so they can come and be in a safe space and not have to socialize during the journey, and that's pretty key. We talk about what's acceptable in terms of emoting. So it's a shared experience. We're healing together, but at the same time, it's not acceptable to be screaming at the top of your lungs for 2 hours. So we definitely want people to be able to release, not hold it in, to shake, to cry, to laugh. But we do ask people. Basically, what I say is balance being kind to yourself and being kind to others. That's just kind of carry on with that mantra through the evening. And then I'd say lastly, one thing I wanted to share about the process is just kind of going around ahead of time and getting everybody's agreement that everybody's going to be physically cool during the journey. There's going to be no physical violence. Everyone's peaceful, and there's going to be no sexual activity during the journey, no sexual touch. And they sign this in the participation agreement, but I like to vocalize it during the journey so everybody hears it. And cannabis can induce a lot of paranoia. So if we can address some of these issues ahead of time that may cause paranoia, that will kind of mitigate that during the journey and make people feel safer.
Can you talk about ketamine? Who would be a good candidate for an individual session? Who would be a good candidate for a group session?
Yeah, it's a great question, John. And the reality is many people would be good candidates for both. So kind of person in general, so let's put it this way. A patient comes to see me in my clinic, and I have the option of prescribing a group session, an individual session. One of the things that might lead me towards an individual session prior to the group is if the person has really significant psychiatric symptom burdens, really tough levels of depression, some suicidality perhaps, some really intense trauma, some really dense obsessive thinking. Those kind of things can, quite honestly, it can be a real challenge to manage in group setting. I think it's really kinder to the individual to really focus on the individual work first, and then we can address whether they're appropriate for a group setting. And certainly another candidate for the individual session might be the person who really has tremendous social anxiety, and this is not the time to work through it. We've got other patient problems. We've got other priorities. So we want to honor that and take them where they're at. In terms of just very briefly, who might be a good candidate for a group journey? Generally, it's going to be somebody who's going back to the visual. Someone who has any significant medical issues, assuming they meet criteria for inclusion in the process, I'd be much more comfortable doing it individually. Going to the group session. So kind of person who might be a good fit for a group session is somebody who generally has less, overall severity of their psychiatric symptoms. Not to say they're not suffering, not to say that they're not living the human experience in its fullness, but just luckily for them, they don't have a huge severity. And also, once again, those people who don't have any significant medical issues I have to deal with. As a general rule, those who are more experienced psychedelic allies are going to be more appropriate for a group setting. And there's plenty of other things we can do to help.
Do you have a take on that? Do you have a take on that? No, you don't? Jeez. Can you talk about what people, so if I do a group ceremony, right? And it's an intentional thing, I want to heal something in my past. How does that manifest? How does that come out? Or how do I heal something? How does it work? I can see psychotherapy, that works. That's something very familiar. But how do you do that in the group?
Well, we have our personal intentions that work on the group and everything, but we also, there's a dynamic in the group that we are all sharing similar experiences, the existential angst of being all alone and being able to connect and hearing each other's stories of like, my mother did this, or whatever, and having different age groups to kind of play into that. It's really fun in this, and that we share these experiences together, and that's truly a healing when we are together in community.
So everyone got cards in their hand, right? So if you have questions, I think
Reflection,
take questions.
Yeah, and while we're collecting, I can kind of talk to, how that looks like in the cannabis process, So there is no, there's no kind of psychotherapy that's happening during the session, but we encourage people to be kind of their own psychotherapist. So we have a workshop ahead of time that we really give people a lot of different mindfulness-based tools to be able to safely go into the journey, to look at difficult things, but also to have the tools to come back to center and to be able to make sense of the process. So, like for instance, we do a lot of kind of meditation and work ahead of time after we take the medicine to feel what it feels like to be back in our body and recognize that when you're in the present moment, when your attention is on your breath, or when your attention is in your heart space in your body, you cannot be in your mind at the same time. It's actually quite impossible. It's impossible to be somewhere in the present moment and also be in your thoughts. So we work on that. We work on going from a very difficult thought space to being able to come back into the body, to feel what those sensations are, and really to work those out kind of somatically, to allow your body to do whatever it needs to do to work out those emotions, recognizing that we don't have to process everything through the mind.
Okay, I want to quickly throw some of these questions. And the first one is something that first question is something that we discussed and should touch upon, and that we didn't. And that's COVID, right? So here in groups, we have to manage around COVID here. So the group sessions that we do with the Academy, it's limited to 7 people and 3 sitters, 3 facilitators. And before that, before COVID, we had groups up to 15 people. And we would usually have like 1 facilitator of 4 or so participants. And then we have a role play. We have the doctor, right? I take care of the logistics, music to make sure that everything falls in place. Debbie and usually other female sitters, they handle the whole. What do you call it?
We will take your temperature when you get there. We have a list of all the symptoms that you have to go through. If there is any chance that you were exposed to COVID, you don't have to give your money back, and please do not come in. We ask people to wear masks, and unfortunately right now we're asking people to bring their own blankets and pillows. We have sheepskins that people can be on top of if they have a down thing. Our places are, we have boxes that you have to be in that are wide enough, more than 6 feet apart from everybody. So that once we set our intentions and we get the medicine in people, if the group feels safe, we'll let the group participants take off the masks.
That's based on medical necessity. So from my point of view, if somebody feels claustrophobic or not comfortable, psychologically distressed by having a constricted experience in the mouth, from my point of view, that means medical necessity for allowing them to not wear a mask.
We are always masked. If we hand sanitize if we touch you, going to the next person, and trying to make that really safe. We have a big HIPAA filter, and we keep the doors open, and if it's cold, we keep the fire going.
Yeah, and I'll just share quickly, my process going forward, forehead temperature, if you're above 100.3, we're not letting you in, and you'll get a full refund. They'll sign a declaration statement ahead of time, where they've traveled, who they've come in contact with. Social distancing, mask wearing. I do not, in my setting, I do not require people to wear masks while they're on their mats. To socially distance, they have to wear a mask at the door while they're moving about. But to be in a 5-hour journey with a mask on, I think that's pretty difficult. And first and foremost, right up front, tell people if you feel like you're in a vulnerable group or you're overly concerned of getting the virus, please do not attend, because we don't want that to come up, during the journey, and for that to kind of, traumatize people, emotionally.
Yeah, there was one question about group size and number of facilitators. The answer on the COVID note is a full refund, no pressure. So, anyways, right? It's not good to introduce someone who doesn't really want to show up in the group to force people there because they need that. Another question. How much time does the group get to spend together before they take the medicine? And is it better to have such an evening or whatever? Is that better as a weekend intensive versus like a 3-hour Thursday night? What's the question?
Well, we do both just the individual night and the week or weekend long intensives, and that's nice when you can be submerged totally.
Yeah, just quickly, I want as much interaction ahead of time, and I'm trying to advise as much as I can to get people to interact before we start, before we hit the bowl and begin the ceremony, because the more kind of bonding that happens ahead of time, the more likely people will be to feel safe in the container and want to share and bond afterwards. And I mean, for me, if somebody can walk home and they can get someone's phone number or add somebody on Facebook or get a new friend, that's huge. Mission accomplished.
Yeah. And I would say that when a ceremony or a group session starts, it starts with the rules of the game. And Mark spoke clearly to that. But there is the first introduction is usually through a guided meditation before the medicine takes hold, to get everyone comfortable, to get the anxiety out of the group. Because with these medicines, we open up tremendously, and so anxiety and things like that can spread easily. At the end of a group session, there's definitely a sharing. And the sharing has two main purposes from my perspective. One is that it can be a tremendously impressive life-changing experience. And so people are eager to share that. What happens, right? The other thing is for us as facilitators to check in with people if they are in a good spot, right? Was there not something that they carried back home and feel that was not right? So maybe you're a good Christian and you saw God. That could be a tremendous thing, a cognitive dissonance that you have to work with. And so we want to check in with people. How do you do? And it's a short sharing. We don't call it integration. Integration comes a few days later, but it's like a check-in. And it's a sharing of everyone's experience. It's a short brief.
And one related note to the issue of sharing is the issue of confidentiality. As you can imagine, when you have these deep experiences in groups, confidentiality issues arise. It's just not okay to tell others in the circle who attended without their permission or what happened to them
oh my God, Joe, did you see what I did? You have to Joe, he pulled his pants down. That was crazy. No, right? So this is about safety. We the facilitators need to feel safe. The participants need to feel safe. They're going to vulnerable places. So we require that everyone who participates verbally acknowledges that they will adhere to the highest standards of integrity and confidentiality.
Other question about cultural appropriation. Where's the question?
I like that question.
You want to take it?
Well, ask it first. No.
As he's looking for that, I want you, I bet there's some people in the audience who have tried psychedelics, and I want you to kind of think of a time that maybe you did psychedelics by yourself, and when did you do psychedelics in a more of a group setting with your friends? And just kind of seeing what were the differences with that. I would love to hear a story or two at some point about that, the difference that you guys have in your personal journeys.
So Debbie, how do you navigate the land of where you're looking at other tribes and traditions and what they have done as a ceremony, and how do you incorporate that into your ketamine sessions without really using their language and their model? Right?
Yeah. So I really want to have that conversation before we do the individual groups. I do an interview with clients, and I will ask about their spiritual beliefs or religious beliefs and try to incorporate that with music and anything that they want to do, and honoring all traditions. I really want everything to be exclusive, that every experience works that way, and your connection with source. I do sometimes use the Native American 7 directions, really honoring that tradition. I know Mark and I would say that we use a lot of neo-shamanism kind of things, and really honoring where this came from. Ketamine, and we're starting, what's its lineage? I've been really trying to work with that, with John Lilly and a variety of other people, and, even in our local communities, Scott Shannon and Bill Vander, and any tradition that we can, and really doing it in an honoring way.
Okay, one question was, what are the 7 directions? You want to talk about that? So no.
You're the 7 directions.
For me, the 7 directions are a psychic container. It's a container with the east, where everything, there's a new day, there's a new spring, the south, where the energy and youth comes from, the sunshine. The west is the reflection at the end of the day, where we connect with people around the campfire, around the dinner table, right? And the north, that's where things get dark and where we have reflections. And then Mother Earth, that supports us with everything that we have and do and what we own. And Father Sky, who is the limitless opportunities and possibilities that are out there. And then the 7th direction is the direction of within. That's us, ourselves. Because without us being there, what's the purpose of the whole being, the whole molecule? So those are the 4 directions, the 7 directions. And we incorporate that as a psychic chamber that puts people in the same place, psychology.
Yeah, and so that's beautiful, and I think that is a great way for me to kind of talk about cultural appropriation. So I love participating in 7 directions, and I think it's beautiful. And when I have participants in ceremony that are very familiar with those directions, I ask them to call them out. But personally, I don't have a very deep personal relationship spiritually with the 7 directions. So I don't do that myself during the ceremony. And if I were, it would feel inauthentic. So I think a big part of cultural appropriation is only bringing things into the ceremony that feel very personal and feel very authentic, and you're not just simply copying some other lineage. And that goes along with the music as well. So, cannabis is the people's medicine. It is used in a lot of different traditions, from the Santo Daime Church in Brazil, along with ayahuasca, to the Rastafaris and many different other areas. But I'm careful how much Santo Daime music I bring in. I may bring in a song or two because it connects me to that tradition. But I think it's a very personal decision when you're leading ceremony. Many of these traditions are neo-shamanic, syncretic, and they are bringing in other traditions. So in a very sense, it is, you can consider it cultural appropriation. It's a fine line. It's a personal thing. It's good to, really check in and respect those cultures, pay homage when you can, if you know where something originated from, to mention it.
One fun note, in some ancient Indian culture, there was a sacred drink called pam, okay? And so it would typically consist of a warmed milk with flavor with Indian spices like cardamom and other turmeric and some other things, and they'll be infused with cannabis. So our friend Mark here, he's reinvented what I call a bolder version of bong. So he has coconut milk, organically infused cannabis oil, and spices, and it's amazing.
Yeah, just quickly, so members they bring their own cannabis, including some of our participants will bring homegrown oil, and we make tea. But again, it's paying homage. So we mentioned that it is loose interpretation on an ancient Indian drink called bang lassi or bang patandai. Not passing it off as as exactly part of the tradition.
Yeah, I think the bottom line is we honor everyone who came before us. And ketamine is a very new drug, and it's a very new medicine. And so it has to be different from what everyone else has been doing in the traditional way. But we can leverage their knowledge. They have been developing this knowledge over centuries, over millennia. And so we in the West, we can leverage that, and we can use that in a way that's helpful for our business. Another question is, how can I develop the skills needed to facilitate group work?
I mean, I really don't think I'm the best person to answer that question. That's not my training. I mean, I'm a psychiatrist. We weren't trained on how to do groups. We were trained on how to prescribe Prozac.
There's different levels with that. From the licensed psychotherapist standpoint, we are educated in group therapy, Galvin style, and accountability, and looking at that counter transference and everything. We like to include sitters who have training in psychedelic sittings, so that they might be there to help hold space, to be able to come and help an individual if they're struggling, to just the whole.
And then there are we talked about karate. That's in north Colorado. That's a group that trains people. And then there's the Wilson group. Dr. Wilson is one of the leaders in the ketamine arena. He wrote the book Ketamine Papers, which was the second best instead of that MAPS did with MDMA study. So they chose MDMA and not ketamine, but the whole thing was written down into the.
And I'll say also, I've done training with psychedelic harm reduction, sitting training with a group called Medicinal Mindfulness in Boulder, led by Daniel McQueen. And we use cannabis as a psychedelic, and so that's a great opportunity to get some space holding and sitting training. He offers a number of different training programs, and I would say just like taking psychedelics, start low and go slow. So if you're going to be facilitating a group, start with 2 or 3 people. Like don't invite a dozen people. You gotta get familiar with all of the different situations, individual dynamics, what could go wrong, and really kind of build up your experience.
So let's add something. I had an announcement for the group. That could probably wait till after.
Yeah, we have the last question. Got the time's up. So it's a very practical question. It's actually 2 questions. It's how long does a cannabis journey last? And the other one is how long is a cannabis journey?
So our ketamine group sessions are 4 hours for the actual medicine work, and then we have an hour integration for individual groups. I like to do 3 hours. There's other clinics, they do more 2 hours. I don't want to send people out the door when they're still not able to walk, and I really want them to be integrated before they go. We really do some amazing work when they're coming out and starting to enter their body again. So I'd like that 3 hours, and then you can decide to do a half an hour integration or an hour integration.
Yeah, ours are about 6 hours. So we start a little after 4, 4:20 to be exact. And we try to wrap up by 10:30, 11. We have a little bit of workshop and discussion, agreements ahead of time, expectations. Then we take the medicine around probably 6 o'clock. We do some meditative practices, and the bulk of the journey is about 3 hours, and then we do some sharing and have some delicious snacks afterwards. Yeah. And I think it's important to mention that anybody who is guiding any kind of a psychedelic journey, whether it's individual or group, people are not allowed to drive home. So if you come to one of my ceremonies, you have to arrange transportation ahead of time or agree to have a ride share. It's absolutely, you drive to the ceremony, you're not coming in.
So there was a handful of questions that we didn't get to answer. So I would thank everybody who put these questions forward. And so we will mingle here. And so if your question has not been answered, or you didn't write your question down, just walk up to us and we'll be here available to go deeper into this.
So one announcement that you guys might find interesting. So on October 27th, there's an upcoming event. It is an online psychedelic summit, called the Future of Psychedelic Medicine. And I'm one of the people organizing the conference. As far as I know, it's free. And several people in this room are going to be panelists. We've got Katie Klum, representing NOAC. We've got Mark Abrams, we've got myself, and we've got Debbie Elliott. And several luminaries in the field locally. We've got Scott Shannon, we've got Bill Vanderweer. Anyway, I'll just leave it at that. It's going to be a lot of fun, and if you want to check it out.
And just one announcement for me. I have my next live in-person ceremony coming up on Saturday, October 31st. It happens to be, obviously, Halloween, Day of the Dead, a right full moon. So we're going to honor the departed and celebrate the departed under the energies of the full moon. Love to have you guys. I have some flyers on the table in front. And also, if you want to know about future ceremonies, there's also an email sign-up thing. My thing is called Highest Light, and the website is highestlight.love.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. That was really informative, enlightening. I do group work too, and I learned a lot. I got some ideas and questions and things percolated in my mind. So I appreciate you all being here. Can we just give one more round of applause? That was a good discussion. So what we'll do now, we've got the space for a little bit longer. We like to wrap up early so that if you have a question for any of the speakers, they can kind of mill around or meeting each other. I know obviously we're trying to social distance. Please do keep your mask on if you're mingling. And otherwise, we've got the space for another 20-ish, 25 minutes or so. So please feel free to hang out if you'd like to. Next event here is on November 8th, and details will be coming out soon. Katie Markley, an amazing woman in Boulder, is going to be our guest. We're very excited to have her here. We've been trying to get her here for a minute. Thank you all again, and thank you everybody for coming. Good to see you. Thanks.